promenade of Edinburgh because we're already turning down onto George IV Bridge. Now this is a bridge over land. You're going to see the actual bridge part. Then you're going to say, where's the bridge? Keep looking down. You're going to see there's a whole... She said, you've been very kind to me. I haven't had a lot of money and everything. She said, but, you know, it's a shame to see you going. I've got a publisher for this book. It's a million to one shot, I know, but if it goes big, maybe you can sell books of it here or something. But why is it called the Elephant House? Let's do a bit of history. In 1705, that place there was Abraham Seepers with his pet elephant. And the elephant was doing massive pees and poos. They were seeping through the floorboards into the baker's bread. The ceiling started to sag. The baker had had enough. He complains to the local council. Check out this bloody Dutchman and his elephant. The council come round to evict him. Abraham Seepers knows he's going, but he...
Car on the road, and suddenly there's a noise. He steps and opens the coffin, and there's Maggie Dixon. Her first words, "Am I in heaven?" He says, "No, you're in Portobello." She says, "What happens now?" He says, "You're going back to the grass market." He turned around and brought her back, and the crowd went wild. "This is brilliant. She gets to hang again." Wait, give me a sandwich, Mum, I only missed this one. They put her up there with a rope around her neck, ready to hang, and suddenly a man shouts, "Stop!" Running into Grassmarket comes a local lawyer, and above his head he's holding Maggie Dixon's original death certificate. He now stands and argues against every lawyer in town, saying that Maggie Dixon is already legally dead. She served her sentence, she can't hang again, and he won. It was the start of the double jeopardy law here in the UK. Maggie Dixon was legally dead, her sentence had been successfully carried out, and he had a piece of paper to prove it. Well, she went home, in fact she remarried. She had 3 more children. I bet she declared those ones. She was known as Half-Hang It Maggie for the rest of her days. She would still get on. Now, you might have noticed we've been this way before. We're going to do a wee loop back around to come back onto Greyfriars Bobby. The world's most famous dog, of course, famous for his loyalty. Bobby was a tiny little Skye Terrier puppy, bought from new by a local man called Old Jock, John Gray, a night watchman, a nighttime policeman. Very popular man, kept everyone nice and safe as they slept. And him and Bobby were a puppy that the whole city would look out for. Everyone liked John Gray, everyone loved little Bobby. They were looked out for 2 years, but after 2 years of this, John Gray died. Bobby has no one else in the world. He follows the funeral cortege into Greyfriars Kirkyard. They bury John Gray, everyone goes home. Then people started to notice, day after day on this mound of earth, is little Bobby. Now some workmen working on the church felt sorry for him. They built a shelter over him. And word starts to spread around Edinburgh, further around Scotland, even down to England, stuff like that. And people come and see this. Edinburgh was overrun with stray dogs. The new law said no more strays. A dog must be licensed. The dog owner now needs to buy a dog license. The dog needs a collar with a tag. And on license and tag must be written 3 things. The name of the dog, the name of the owner, and the address. But an unlicensed dog is a stray. This includes Bobby. A stray dog is going to be picked up by the dog catcher, sent to the pound and put to death. Bobby was an easy dog to find. He was set for execution, but at the 11th hour, the law... Later on, of course, came the statue of Greyfriars Bobby. Lady Burdett Coots of the Coots banking empire put up the money for it. It's the world's smallest listed building, the statue of Greyfriars Bobby. And then what happened? All the tourists came, and what did they do? "Oh, bless him, let's rub his golden nose for good luck." Please don't. An estimated 220,000 tourists a year come up. You still on? Going to the museum? Someone said something. Anyway, the National Museum built on the site of Charles Darwin's original house, and this statue here on the right is a man called William Henry Playfair. Now, he is an architect here in Edinburgh, a very important one, and of course that's a dangerous job. No! Off he sets across Southbridge, clip-clop, clip-clop. And about a third of the way, the little old lady starts wobbling. But by halfway, she is having a party up there. And of course it happens, she goes, whack! She hits the floor. There's a stunned silence, and the quick-thinking man had to jump up and shout, "And she's dead, the curse is lifted," and we've used Southbridge ever since. You couldn't write this, could you? People go, "No, that ain't true." Yes, it is. This is still, by the way, so there's 19 arches underneath, covered over a load of old streets and buildings and everything else, and a whole underworld grew up under here. This is considered the most haunted place in the entire UK, the vaults underneath Southbridge, and there were murderers, and there were some very nasty people, and there were body snatchers, there were even ladies whose affections could be rented for about pure misogyny. It's in our library. A man decided in, I think, like the 16 or 1700s to compile a list of the 66 ladies whose affections could be rented for short periods of time who lived along Royal Mile. And you can still have a look at it. It's quite interesting. It gives you lots of things about the features of the woman, you know, hair colour, age, teeth, some, none, all. Weirdly, of course, if a lady to perhaps what this lady has a flair for doing. And it does it in their way, because he doesn't want to look like a misogynist, of course. One of them plays an interesting pair of kettle drums. I think a personal favourite happens to be perfectly understood. There is a stop coming up here in the middle of Royal Mile for John Knox's house, if that is you, wait the hand or the bell. If not, of course, I get to tell another story. Now, you might notice these little alleyways, these closes, we call them, the little lanes that run either side of Edinburgh. They crisscross the city. They're closes, quite literally, because they're close, they're narrow. And Edinburgh was a very small city. When I say small, we were encompassed by the Flodden Wall, the city wall. One side was at Greyfriars Bobby, the other side, right through these traffic lights. You're out of old Edinburgh. Into this tiny city, we packed 55,000 people in a wooden shanty town that starts to go up 15, 16 stories or more into the air. 55,000 people living on top of each other, no toilets. What do? You need a pee in a poo, you do it in a bucket, you throw it out the window. People were getting hit, it was rather disgusting, so in 1780 we introduced a new law, the Nastiness Act. Now the Nastiness Act says you can no longer buy alcohol after 10 o'clock at night because you can't throw the bucket out the window except for between 11 o'clock at night and 6 in the morning. There's an hour to get home from the pub. Before you throw the bucket, you now have to shout a watchword, something everyone will know. We come up with a French term, gardez-vous, watch out below. We don't speak French very well here in Scotland, we come up with our own version, gardez-vous. This is why we still call the toilet below. What do you do if you're down there on the street and you hear the words gardez-vous? You've got to think and react quickly and shout back the reply. Hold your hand! You've got a few more seconds to run out the way. And of course, drunk late night revellers being what they are, there's always going to be some drunks still out there at 11 o'clock when the bells go. And of course, everyone's shouting at the same time, they want the bucket out the house. Gardez-vous! Gardez-vous! And they're on the street, our drunk friend goes, oh God, where's it coming from? Splat! It gets you! If you're that drunk to this day, we still say you are, shit-faced. That's where it comes from. Notice there's a camera up there. I can get away with this because it's 100% historically accurate. That is true. We are coming down towards Holyrood. Now, the Palace of Holyrood is closed Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Off-peak. That is you know the Holyrood, the cross of Christ. It was all woodland out here 900 years ago. And in the year... Oh, you're getting off there. Okay, 1 second, Stan. Women changed their minds, Stan. I bet you didn't know that, did you? You're welcome. You're welcome. So in 1128, King David I was out there hunting in the woods on a Sunday. Oh, you can't hunt on Sunday, it's God's day. He should have known better. His mum was a saint. A giant stag came out from a clearing in the woods. It terrified his horse. The horse rears up. David I thrown flat on his back to the floor. The stag towered over him. He suddenly said between the antlers of the stag he had a vision of the Holy Rood, the cross of Christ, but it was God admonishing him for hunting on a Sunday. He got the message. He decided to build the Abbey of the Holy Rood, now the Abbey of Holyrood, to atone for his sins and to remind everyone to keep Sunday as a day of God. So you know, you have the palace, of course. Now we're going to do this bit twice. We go in and then we go out and back up that way. So start to look to your left. You've got the Abbey's just behind the palace. The palace is actually joined onto the nave of the Abbey. Now the palace, it was built by King James I, 1501. Silly thing, building things, of course. He died 1513, Baron of Flodden. Only lived to see half the West Wing get built. This building here on the right is the Scottish Parliament. Let's see if we've learned our lesson. This was designed by a Catalan architect called Enrique Morales in 1997. What happened to Enrique? He died, didn't he? That's what today, didn't he? Now up here in front of the bus is a great big lump of rock, Salisbury Crags. Rome likes to say that they're the city built on 7 hills, and they are, I've been there. But so is Edinburgh and our 7 hills of volcanoes. In 5 minutes' time we go up higher, you're going to see just how big it is. But it used to be a lot bigger than that. For 200 years we quarried this stone. We sold it to the City of London. They used to say the streets of London are paved with gold. They're not. They're paved with Salisbury Crags. That's what the pavements of London are made out of. Start to look to your right. You can see a tower and what looks like a little fairy tale castle over there with the snow and in the trees. That is not a castle. That there is a fascia that's built around. Of them. There's crowns on top of those lampposts. See them here? That's the sign of a royal park. You're over the road from a royal palace. You're a smelly old beer brewery. Now, Queen Victoria was not amused. It was the 1840s. She'd only just become queen. She was a very young queen at this time, of course, and she was here at the palace of Holyrood with her husband, Prince Albert. Queen Victoria looks out the window and she says, Albert, it's ghastly. I don't want to look at this smelly old brewery, Albert. Go have a word. Go do something about it, Albert. Prince Albert says, very nice, my little Edelweiss. This is perfect German, I'm sure everyone here knows that. I will fix it for you. What does he do? He didn't have it knocked down. He's a very nice man. He did old dynamic earth. And this is our next stop, and if that is you, wave your hand or ding a bell. Dynamic Earth doesn't look that big, it's all underground. It's an experiential geological journey through planet Earth, as seen from Scotland's perspective. It's quite good on a cold day, if it rains or something like that as well. So you go down. But I like to tell a story going back to the time of the third Marquess. One particular year during his tenure was 1707, the signing of the Act of Union, the birth of the United Kingdom. Now here in Edinburgh we have a lie. An angry mob chased the signatories out of Moray House, down the road up one of these side turnings back up onto Royal Mile. They saw a little doorway going down to a basement, they fled down there, closed the doorway shut, the angry mob's gone past. They signed the Act of Union down there in the dark. What did we lie about that? Well, it turns out the United Kingdom was actually born in what is now the ladies' toilets in the Bella Italia pizzeria. The United Kingdom was born in a ladies' toilet, so we lie until people it was at Moray House. Now, I said the poor people didn't like the Act of Union, the aristocracy loved it. England had all the money, and after the signing of the Act of Union, most of our aristocracy in Edinburgh went down south to London. They followed the money, and they weren't very popular amongst the poor people. They couldn't skedaddle from town. It creates a void or a vacuum here in Edinburgh into which steps a new aristocracy, the aristocracy of the mind. The great thinkers are here. The Scottish Enlightenment is upon us. Up there onto Salisbury Crags at this time walks a man called James Hatton, known today as the father of geology. He studies igneous and sedimentary rock. He comes down and makes an amazing announcement. He says the Earth is 1 million years old. He's 13 billion years wrong, but he isn't that bad for his time. You see, the church, who taught everyone everything, they said the Earth was 6,006 years old. The Neptunists, the early geologists, thought the Earth came out to sea and all that jazz. They said that the Earth was around about 4,000 years old, give or take. What they knew for a fact, however, a fact. Planet Earth was created on Friday the 23rd. That is a Turkish bathhouse. Did Mary use it? I don't know. Probably too busy with the goat's milk. Look to your left. I told you it's a lot bigger when we went up higher. That's the volcano there. Salisbury Crags with Arthur's Seat and the high point. That's the blowhole for that volcano. Used to be 3 times the height of that, several million years ago. People always say Arthur's Seat, anything to do with King Arthur. It depends who you believe. The ancient legend says that King Arthur commanded up there of a great battle against a tribe called the Hybees, who lived just down off Easter Road. Ironically enough, Hibernian FC now play football there. We call them the Hybees. But in mythology, the Hybees also had the body of a man and the head of a dog, so, probably didn't happen. Another excuse for another reason is that Arthur's Seat is named after the original name. Arthur said it was the Hill of Arrows, but sadly, we can't remember why we call it that anymore. Now there is a stop coming up here on the left. Bit cold to stop out here, but it's a good view anyway. From the here in Edinburgh, you said to your wife, oh, let's go up there. She go, what's happening? Summer holidays. There's children rioted. A 13-year-old boy shot the chief constable dead right between the eyes. He got away with it. His dad was rich. Down there on the left is a graveyard, and there's a great fun story. You can tell I love a graveyard, don't you? The important grave down there is a man called Adam Smith, the father of economics, the man who wrote The Wealth of Nations. This is the start of international trade and commerce. It's the world we know today. That's really boring, wasn't it? Let me tell you a fun story. If we were down in that graveyard in the late summer of 1843, quite late in the evening, and we had bumped into a strapping author called Charles Dickens. His days of fame and fortune had been like nearly bankrupt in 1843, out of money, out of ideas. He'd been here in Edinburgh on a promotional tour, and it hadn't gone well. He's going home the next day. He says to his wife, before we go, I want to pay my respect to the grave of Adam Smith. He's wandering around the graveyard, it's dark. Where is he? Oh, there he is! He tripped over another grave in the dark. Whose grave had he tripped over? The name in the gravestone read Ebenezer. Ebenezer Scroggie had won the contract to provide whiskey for the entire event of the visit of King George IV. But of course, what happened after that, everyone forgot Adam Smith, one of the titans of the Scottish Enlightenment, because look, Ebenezer Scroggie, and it's brilliant. It's like that book I read. Oh, that's brilliant, that. You know, it's Adam Smith. Yeah, no, Ebenezer Scroggie. Everyone was forgetting Adam Smith. In 1890, the Edinburgh newspapers reported that one of Adam Smith's fans, a rotten swine, had gone and stolen Scroggie's gravestone. We've forgotten where we put him. We never replaced the stone. That's no Scroggie. This building here on the left, by the way, is the Balmoral Hotel. The big clock on top always famously runs 3 minutes fast, so you don't miss your train from this place. Waverley. Comes up nicely on cue, doesn't it? Now, Waverley is the only state something a woman might do. Certainly not something a respected lawyer would do. So he uses a pen name, a pseudonym, Waverley. What does it mean? Well, the Waverley Pen Company of Edinburgh was here. Female Swan's Quill is the one Walter Scott used. So when he's writing Waverley, he's going like a mysterious man with a golden pen. No one knew who he was. We used to call him the Wizard of the North. He was outed by another writer, Catherine Sinclair. Keep it over your brain. You'll be it in just a few minutes. That's where Waverley comes from. But now here's the thing. You see, I've done this job long enough to know that 10 seconds or less after getting off this bus, you have forgot everything I've ever told you. Hopefully no one will move here and become an architect. Soon became the world's biggest open-air sewer. It absolutely stank. But in 1590, King James VI finds a novel and interesting use for having. It ain't bad luck, it's witches. You put those witches out, we're going to put them on trial. Now, what happens in a witch trial? I'm going to do a practical demonstration of a little bit of history. And let's try it out. I don't need a victim, and I'm just going to choose this to lie. See, if you said, well, maybe is okay. If you said no, you'd go to hell for lying. Okay? But maybe I'm going to... Now, Edinburgh Bus Tours has cameras everywhere, Norma. And last night, ladies and gentlemen, Norma was seen dancing naked down Princes Street at midnight with Satan. And I'm sure you'll all agree this is pretty compelling evidence. Now, Norma, is that you in the video? I'm glad you said that, Norma, because me and the boys in the office have seen that video 374 times. It's you. To say you know someone inside and out by now is an understatement. Now, Norma, we're going to have to accuse you of being a witch, I'm afraid. And it goes like this. Witch. That was very nice and easy. And now we're going to put you on trial. Well, there's good news, okay? I don't suppose you have a lawyer deal. You're not going to need a lawyer. No, you're not going to need it. Don't worry. God is going to judge you. And do you feel confident now? I mean, God's a nice guy, and what could go wrong? So now we're going to take you to the sewage of the North Loch. I'm going to tie your thumbs to your big toes. Well, if you drown in 55,000 other people's primeval liquid glue, imagine it going down your throat into your lungs. Lovely, isn't it? Enjoy lunch, by the way, folks. The good news is you're innocent. We know you're dead, you know, that's a bummer. But your soul is saved. That's what we're going for today, isn't it, ladies and gents? Norma's soul is saved, and she's not going to dance down the street naked with Satan anymore, and you're going to a better place, isn't that good? Just give me a thumbs up. Now, there is a second outcome. Another thing that happened, you could float. Now, you don't want to float, do you? You'll see that, I'll wait for you to float. You go, hello, Vic. You won't wave, you're floating beside you. Hello, Norma, let me take you out, baby. No, no, you're disappointed, you floated. Now, you're going to be covered in blue, so please don't stand near to me. And I'm going to take you up to the castle. And it's nice, the castle, isn't it? You're going to get a beautiful view over Edinburgh while I burn you to death as a witch. Yeah? And I'm sure you'd agree, Norma, that if you knew that God had decided that you were a nasty, poo-smelling old witch, you'd want to be burnt to death too, wouldn't you? And there's good news. Once I burnt you to death, as the nasty blue-smelling old witch that you are, your soul is saved! Isn't this brilliant? This is a real space, air. You can move, you can breathe. Guess what? They've all got toilets. No one's throwing a poo out the window up there anymore. I suppose I should just have... that we've never repealed, you know, because it's old, it's outmoded, no one's ever fallen foul of it, so we'd never change the law, but it's still the law to this day. I have a few favourite ones. So firstly, think Scotland, think fish. You come up with salmon, Scottish salmon's the best in the world. My favourite old law, still a law today, involves salmon. It is illegal to hold a salmon, whether it's alive or dead, whilst looking suspicious. That is a law. If you pick up a salmon and go, you can get arrested. The last person arrested for holding a salmon suspiciously was arrested in 2013. They had drugs in the fish or something like that. They were suspicious as hell. The law was upheld. It is illegal to kick a can down the street more than 6 times. Else was there chocolate, which... It is illegal for a woman to eat chocolate on a bus. Yeah, so would I. By the way, gentlemen, we don't get it all our own way. It is illegal to chat up a woman who has been horse riding in the last hour. This is true. And if anyone is planning to go to the palace of Holyrood, while you're in Holyrood, it is illegal to die in the palace of Holyrood. Imagine getting invited to Holyrood and being an architect. You are screwed, aren't you? I'm really glad he didn't go now. This is our penultimate stop, Charlotte Square in the West End, if this Duke did something or waved something. By the way, talking of architects, this place was designed by Robert Adam. Do you remember what happened to Robert Adam? He died, didn't he? That's right, the man who built the old College Road. New College was building this as well. Now, who lived here? Your number 10 on the corner. Number 9 is Catherine Sinclair, mentioned there earlier, and 8 is Lord Lister. Going to be telling you about them in a second. The blue door is called the Georgian House. It's a living museum of Georgiana. It's closed for the winter. 6 on the left here is Bute House. That's our 10 Downing Street, if you will. That's the official residence of Scotland's first minister. It used to belong to the Earl of Bute. It's the largest house in Charlotte Square. A lady whose name I just mentioned, Catherine Sinclair, who lived at number 9. She was born at number 6. Now, who are those people? I mentioned Lord Lister, who invented sterilisation of surgical equipment. We call it the carbolic spray. If ever you washed your mouth out with Listerine, that's the man it's named after. Now, at number 6 was born Catherine Sinclair. She moved to number 9. She ended up at 133 George Street. This here on the left is a monument just behind the tree. First, a little stone space rocket. What you notice about nobody in this city could even tell you the name on it or anything about Catherine Sinclair. And that is a tragedy and a travesty compounded by the fact that Edinburgh has not one statue of the women who made Edinburgh. Loads of men, of course. Loads of animals. 6 dogs, a pig, a bear, a sad elephant. We don't have a woman other than Queen Victoria. Until we do, we're getting one. We've got that monument there. And it's a shame that everyone forgets it, because Catherine Sinclair is the most famous woman you've never heard of, the woman who made the modern world today. So as you come back here along Queen Street towards St Andrew's Square, let's level up for the ladies. I could have had 2 of them. We have 2.5 minutes to do this. What do we know about her? Firstly, yes, she outs Walter Scott as the writer of the Waverley novels. She is not being malicious. She's a friend of his, a fan of his. She fully deserves the recognition. He didn't mind, he got a lot richer out of it. Secondly, she's a writer. She's a historian, she's a novelist, a children's author, most importantly, and known as the mother of the modern children's book. Previous children's books before Catherine Sinclair go like this. The kids are the bad guys. The parents are the good guys. The kids are evil and demonic. The parents are perfect saints. It talks down to the children, it moralises at them and makes them feel bad. How dare you be young? What do you think? Every writer in the city hit the floor laughing. They thought she was joking. She said, no, I think this could go well. They said, no, this is the road to ruin. Children want miserable childhoods because when they're respectable adults, they'll thank you later. She said, by Catherine Sinclair, right on the floor with J.K. Rowling and anything else. In fact, it didn't go out of print for over 100 years, but she still gets bigger than that. The world's first true feminist, her book, The March of Intellect, was the first call for parity and equality in women's education. She got it. Nobody laughed anymore. She's a massive philanthropist, the city of Edinburgh. The world's first homeless shelters, soup kitchens, municipal drinking fountains, municipal benches, specialist schools for girls to make sure they got it right. All the brainchild of Catherine Sinclair, paid for by Catherine Sinclair. So too was 40% of the Scott Monument up there paid for by her. She's still bigger than this. She creates the fantasy genre. No book in any language had ever had wizards, dragons, giants and fairies before Catherine Sinclair puts pen to paper, because people couldn't imagine a world that couldn't exist. She said, "Look, see the world through the eyes of a child." We can use her imagination. She's the woman who taught the world to dream. It is coming up to Christmas. Try it, a world without Catherine Sinclair. If it's fantasy, turn it off. There's nothing left. Your kids don't even have any toys. Catherine Sinclair deserves a Scott monument like that, not that little green thing in the corner. Now we're coming into St Andrew's Square at the end of the tour, but I like to leave my tours a certain way.
I'm your tour guide. My name is David and our driver is Stan. Now, first of all, the Edinburgh tour will last around an hour and 10 minutes. It will take us through the old town of Edinburgh, the new town of Edinburgh, and we'll touch briefly on Holyrood Park. There are 14 stops on the tour, and I'll try and announce each stop prior to arrival. Your ticket should be valid for 24 or 48 hours, depending on the type of ticket you've purchased, and the last bus leaves this stop today at 4 o'clock this afternoon. First bus tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, and buses run every 30 minutes. Now, I did say that the tour would take us through the new town of Edinburgh. Just to put that into perspective, the new town of Edinburgh was the result of a competition held by the city fathers in 1767. So the new town of Edinburgh, it's over 250 years old, and yet it's still called the new town today. The competition was won by a young architect by the name of James Craig, who gave us the layout of Edinburgh's new town, very much as it is now. The main street, George Street, named after the King, King George III, who was on the throne at the time of the new town's development. George Street is currently slightly behind us, to the right-hand side of us there, and we'll travel along parts of George Street later in the tour. At either end of George Street are beautiful squares. Charlotte Square at the west end, which we'll travel right round towards the end of the tour, and at the east end of George Street we have St Andrew's Square, where we are at the moment. St Andrew's Square in the new town of Edinburgh. St Andrew's Square was for many years the heart of the financial district of the city of Edinburgh, but over the years St Andrew's Square has changed considerably, and today the square is a real mix, both of architectural style and of business times. Today we have retail on the square. If you look directly ahead of us, you see Harvey Nichols, the store. On the left-hand side of Harvey Nichols, there's a little lane or alley called Maltrees Walk, home to exclusive designer outlets. Today, if you walk from here to the far end of Maltrees Walk, you'll be in St James Quarter, a brand new £1 billion shopping development that opened in June last year. Later in the tour, we'll pass one of the main entrances to St James Quarter and try and point that out to you in due course. On the right-hand side of Harvey Nichols, we've got number 35, St Andrew's Square. One of the earliest properties in the square was the work of Robert Adam, and we'll see more examples of Adam's work during the course of the tour. For many years, number 35, the square, was the head office of the Royal Bank of Scotland. But in 1825, the building next door, number 36, Dundas House, came on the market. And the Royal Bank of Scotland at the time didn't want a rival bank taking over the building next door to themselves. So they purchased the property for the sum of £35,000. I'm told that in today's money that equates to about £2.5 million. Royal Bank. Before we turn, if you glance to your left, you'll get a quick glimpse of the Firth of Forth, a little bit misty, the hills of Fife beyond. And then coming up on your left, 35 I mentioned, Robert Adam, and then this beautiful building, Dundas House. As I say, you don't have to be a customer of the Royal Bank, you can wander into the entrance foyer, the ground floor banking hall. Beautiful ceiling in the ground floor banking hall. There's also information placards in the ground floor banking hall telling you the history of the building and of the wealthy merchant Lawrence Dundas who had the property built in the first place. In the centre of the square, very tall column, and on top of the column, about 150 feet above us, stands Henry Dundas, a very distant relative of Lawrence Dundas I mentioned earlier. I've heard Henry Dundas described as the most corrupt politician of his day. I'm sure his family would disagree. He was the first Viscount Melville, first Lord of the Admiralty. He was an MP. He was in fact the last British MP to be impeached. He was impeached for misuse of public funds, and although admonished, never served in public office again. As we turn the corner here, in front of us, probably the most iconic monument in the city of Edinburgh today, the Scott Monument. Often called the Gothic Rocket, it certainly resembles Thunderbird 3. It's one of the tallest monuments to a writer anywhere in the world. Behind that, the skyline of the old town of Edinburgh, in part medieval old town. Beautiful building with the flagpoles and the dome. That's the former head office of the Bank of Scotland. Defensive capabilities to Edinburgh Castle. What can you say about Edinburgh Castle? Quite magnificent. The Romans were in this part of the world roughly 2,000 years ago. The Roman historian Tacitus in 75 AD made mention of the fort on the hill. So there's been a fortified presence on the top of Castle Rock going back at least 2,000 years. The oldest building today on the ramparts of Edinburgh Castle is St Margaret's Chapel, built during the reign of King David I of Scotland in memory of his mother, Queen Margaret, who sadly died in Edinburgh Castle in 1093 upon hearing of the death of her husband Malcolm. Passenger for stop 2, thanks Dan. Just hang fire there, we'll wait till the buses stop. Beautiful red sandstone building on the right there. I know it's now the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. It'll always be the Cali to me. It opened in 1903 as the Caledonian Hotel and the Caledonian Railways, and 50 trains a day. Sadly closed in the 1960s during the beaching era. Many a famous resident stayed at the Cali Hotel over the years. It was years afterwards I discovered the photograph was purely for publicity purposes and the horse hadn't been staying in the first floor bedroom. Cali Picture House on the left hand side, a 15-minute intermission. We'll put on the second half of the film, at which point I said I'm off to the pub. She said I'm staying to watch the end of the film, so it was a very short-lived romance. Usher Hall on the left here, amazing building. Still reckoned to be one of the finest concert halls in Europe, an operation of 100,000 corner, the Odeon Cinema. I remember when that was the ABC in the 1960s, and the ABC cinema caused havoc in 1964 when the Beatles played at the ABC. Turn now into Bread Street, named after the bread bakers. They were moved here because of the dangers of fire, moved from the safety of the town walls. And then we turn into Spittal Street, named after the Lord Provost, James Spittal. Interesting perspective of the castle directly ahead of us on the skyline. Up on your left-hand skyline, you have the old barracks building. On the right-hand skyline, you'll see the great hall, the 4 large windows. To the right-hand side of that, the royal apartments. And you'll notice the apertures in the walls below, they were for the dungeons. Stop 3 on the tour, Johnson Terrace for the West End and the theatres. No one for stop 3, thanks Stan. As we walk Johnson Terrace, there's a brick building coming into view on the right that I always like to mention, very large windows. That's where one of Edinburgh's favourite sons, who sang in 1953, but the school building comes back into view on the right, George Heriot School. Work on that started 1628. Oliver Cromwell used the building as a hospital in 1650. First pupils went there in 1659, which I think is incredible. Tallest steeple in the old town of Edinburgh on the left there, steeple of the old Highland Kirk. No longer a church, it's now home to the organised festival, it's called the Hub. And then we come into the main stop on the tour, stop 4 for the castle. Please remain seated. Esplanade, Scotch Whisky Tasting Centre, Tartan Weaving Museum, Camera Obscura, Edinburgh's oldest purpose-built visitor attraction, 5 floors of fun, great place to spend some time. Also Gladstone's Land on the left there with a hawkery outside.
Formed in 1707, and it's only as recently as 1999 has Scotland So we're on George IV Bridge. This road was built for the visit of George IV in 1832. And on the right hand side coming up, the most photographed small dog statue in the world, it's Greyfriars Bobby. Just there on the right, down by the little lamp with a shiny nose. Yes, a lovely little doggy statue. Why do we have him? Well, when his master died, Bobby building with the turrets is the oldest student union in Great Britain. Even the library that there was once in there has been converted into a bar. Goodness me, to the HMS Beagle. And he went off on his 5-year journey to Australia, the Galapagos Islands. And when he came back, he wrote up his findings in The Origin of Species and Natural Selection. And he basically, see? You can still see the structure of the hospital here with the wards in the architecture. And some people say this building is the inspiration for Hogwarts in the Harry Potter stories. There has been a school there since 1652. Wow, look at the lovely sunshine on the buildings behind as well in the castle, eh? Isn't that lovely? Yeah. Lovely golden, everything's getting lit up. So the building, the original building, dates from 1652 when George Heriot died. He was the goldsmith inside. Curiously small windows here. You'd think that they want, well certainly on the other side we saw the big windows facing north. They seem not to want a lot of daylight into their studios. And then the air engines used to be. That two of Great Britain's most notorious serial killers operated. Now, I'm sorry, I don't want to pick on you, but these guys were Irish. They were from the north. William Burke and William, they knew they had a unique selling point. Their bodies were the freshest in town. And so, of course, there was huge demand for their product. 16 victims later, they were caught, which is awful. Can you imagine living around here? Must have been terrifying. Well, they went on trial. As you can imagine, because all the victims were dissected, there was no evidence, right? In Ireland, where he died a pauper. William Burke, not so lucky. He was sentenced to death by hanging. His body, once dead, was to be dissected. 1829, almost 200 years ago. And here in the Grass Market, anybody wanting off here, the Grass Market? Nice bars, restaurants, independent shops here that make shopping tolerable for men like me. Nice independent shops. Anybody wanting off here? No, I don't think so, Karen. I think we're all good. We used to have the public gallows in this market square. And when it was hanging day, 20,000 people came out to watch. It was entertainment for them. Imagine that. Of course, it was long before Netflix, Harry and Meghan stuff, and long before professional football and the World Cup. It was entertainment for folk. Anyone watching the semi-final tonight? No? Yeah. I am, oh yeah. Who's playing tonight? I've forgotten. Argentina. Must be Argentina, Croatia. And Croatia. Who's going to win?
Argentina.
Well, I hope Messi plays well. He's had a good tournament. On the right hand side, the graveyard, very well protected to stop the grave robbers getting in, of course. Notice how big the gravestones are. Back around 1500, the wealthy people of Edinburgh spent a lot of money once they were gone being remembered. Quite unfashionable these days, of course. No big headstones these days. And another chance to see wee Bobby on the left here with his shiny nose. okay? Just down there by the lamppost. Now, I know I've seen Bobby getting rubbed a 3D liver. That was a live rubbing. You're very lucky. Not everybody gets to see that. Now, second time round by the university, this time ahead of us, data sciences. Wow! Mind-blowing stuff. If any of you are mathematicians, Mr. Bayes did study at Edinburgh University, Bayesian mathematics, used for forecasting. Now, any of you staying overnight in Edinburgh, if you enjoy folk music, you might want to check out Sandy Bell's pub, which is along here on the left-hand side. And they often play folk music. Have a look at their website, see what's on tonight. Sandy Bell's. Not amplified, just a nice, quiet bit of folk music. The National Museum of Scotland. And in the architecture, maybe you can make out the filing cabinet drawer being pulled from the side of the building, representing the archive function that the museum has for us. In this modern extension of the building, we've got 5 floors, all about Scotland. Another chance to see Bobby. This is our final chance. And on the left, the graveyard where his master was buried up that wee alleyway. On the right hand side, the National Museum. They've got the Bernard Klein exhibition on at the moment. That's free of charge up there. Bernard Klein was an influential designer in the 1960s and 70s in particular. The Bernard Klein exhibition, I went to the fashion hall, the fashion exhibition hall, and that was great, very interesting. So this is South Bridge. You wouldn't at first sight believe you were on a bridge with 19 arches below us, but if you look left and right at the railings, you'll see how high we are above the Cowgate below us. Cowgate's one of the oldest streets in Edinburgh, and the arches below us were inhabited at one time, not today. Princess Street and the Balmoral Hotel. And we are turning right down the Royal Mile. You wanting up? Yeah. Yes, please. Yes, please, Karen. And that's what happens here in Scotland. Although today, well, Scotland is a right old melting pot. All faiths are welcome. I should say all faiths ask to get back in. And so that's why we've got the pub on the right hand side, the World's End. This really was the World's End for many people. Nowadays we have Murray House Teacher Training College, where J.K. Rowling graduated as a French teacher. It's just ahead of us on the right with the spiky pillars and the balcony. Of course, she was so successful in her writing that she never actually did teach French. Robbie Coltrane, the late Robbie Coltrane, I'm going to miss him, aka Hagrid the Horrible. He also graduated from there as an English teacher. Now on the left we've got the King's Church in Edinburgh. I'm getting used to saying that. Not the Queen's Church. And in the graveyard At this time of year, we always have to mention Ebenezer Scroggie. Yes, Charles. Little primary school on the right hand side now, and the kids will be looking forward to their Christmas holiday break. And we're coming down towards the stop for the Scottish Parliament, Holyrood House, and well, access to Arthur's Seat. Sounds like some folk want off, yeah. Now, the Palace of Holyrood House is closed every Tuesday, and we've got on this bus and not the later ones because it is getting dark, and actually down here the buildings aren't very, well, they're not lit at all. So we really struggle on the last tour when we come down here. But straight ahead of us now, the yellow sandstone and the turrets of the oldest part of the Palace of Holyrood House. That dates from 1500. And then to the left of that old park, you've got the Abbey. That even predates even older. The Abbey where the kings and queens of Scotland were crowned and later buried. That's the Parliament on the right. We'll be coming back round this way. But as we turn the corner, if you can find the crowns on the top of the lampposts, you're entering the Royal Park, and thank you for keeping up your excellent behaviour. Here's the palace, and behind the holly bushes here on the left, that's where the royal family host their garden parties in early July. And if you're lucky enough to get an invitation, you can enjoy a wee cucumber sandwich and a cup of tea. This park used to be the hunting ground for the royal family. Today, the largest suburban park in Europe. And absolutely perishing it is down here. So the road that we're on just now is 3.5 miles all the way around Arthur's Seat. And at the weekends it's closed to motor traffic. So it's great for going on a wee cycle. Coming up on the right hand side is Dynamic Earth, one of our most popular attractions. And in there they take you from the Big Bang to the present day in a highly interactive way, shaking you in an earthquake, freezing you in a polar ice cap as if you needed to be any colder today. And then you get deafened in the rainforest with all the monkeys and the birds. So after all of that, you might be feeling just a little bit tired. You can relax in the nice reclining chairs in their IMAX cinema and enjoy one of their films on the theme of space exploration. If you want to go, make sure you get your ticket from one of our bus drivers and you'll get £1 off your entrance fee. Now, anybody wanting off here? It's not open today, Dynamic Earth, I should have said that. It's open Wednesday through to Sunday at the moment. And there's the Scottish Parliament, well, the rear elevation. That's a polite way of saying its backside. Not everybody likes this building. The black shapes around the windows representing the curtains drawn from the windows to express truth. And the Scottish Parliament are built on the sites of breweries. Brewing was a very important industry because the water here in Edinburgh was terrible. And as part of the brewing process, of course, you boil up all the water and you kill all the bugs. Beer is a health food. It's official. Now on the right hand side there, one of our new industries, computer game development. That's the headquarters of Rockstar. And we do have some wonderful clinics in Edinburgh that can help you. Well, you'll be looking forward to the next release 2024, I believe.
I'm happy with the remake.
What's that?
I was happy with the remake getting made.
The remake. Ah.
Being Vice City and that, I was happy with that being made.
All right. Okay.
I'm
Cool.
showing my age here.
If you want to go up Arthur's Seat, the path's just along there. Arthur's Seat, the biggest of our hills in Edinburgh. You can just about make out, silhouetted against the sky, the Lion of England. Congratulations to the Lionesses on their success in Europe. Commiserations to the men's team. Well, I did fight the Unicorn of Scotland, as fictional as Scotland's participation in the World Cup. However, it does represent bravery, purity, and above all, integrity. Yes, all the attributes of our good friend Boris Johnson. I'm not sure how well that went down in the bus there, Karen. Well, you know. Do you like Boris Johnson, do you? Good riddance to bad rubbish. Liz Truss, there's another one. Oh, she's a complete joke. Thank God she's gone. I mean, at least I can afford where medicinal herbs are grown. A prize for anyone who can spot Prince Harry. You know, Mary Queen of Scots was a great sportswoman, and since we're talking about the World T7, £1.5 to £2 million. You can see the lovely big rooms up there in the first floor. We've got the consuls of Switzerland up here and the United States of America. Beautiful big rooms, lovely cornice work. And on the left coming up is the memorial to to Robert Burns. Of course, at New Year, well, most of us sing Auld Lang Syne. Do you sing that in Ireland?
Yeah.
You do, yeah. It's become traditional all over the world. Well, penned by Robert Burns. And there's the old town of Edinburgh, looking very cold and frosty indeed. We're probably all looking forward to a nice hot drink or a wee hot toddy. And some modern buildings down here. That's the UK government buildings down there. And the Edinburgh City Council, actually really nice modern office blocks. A pleasure to work in here. 23 degrees C. Ooh, toasty. Ice in the windows this morning. It reminded me of my childhood. His house, government building. Nicola Sturgeon has our offices in here. His Mine was filmed 3 years ago. And below, down there on the right, is where Ewan McGregor narrowly avoided death in the opening scene of Trainspotting. Back on Princes Street. The shopping centre on the right, if you need some Crimble shopping. The St James Quarter. Skyline is protected. The Edinburgh Old Town's skyline is protected under UNESCO World Heritage status, so we can't mess with it. You will see some modern buildings and extensions over there, but they all have to go through rigorous planning processes. The building there, red and green, is the old headquarters of the Bank of Scotland, now part of Lloyds Banking Group. Yeah, the Bank of Scotland. It was H-Block. You got forced to merge with Lloyds at the time of the great financial crash, 2008. And the wee statue here on the left you can just make out is the missionary David Livingstone, who discovered the Victoria Fund. So we're making our way along Princes Street, and the final part of the tour is a wee scoop around the New Town of Edinburgh. We call it the Georgian New Town because this first phase of New Town development happened between 1770 and 1820 when George III and later his son George IV were the kings. George III, also known as Mad King George. Yeah, he also had to deal with, well, the American War of Independence, which of course we lost. Elaborate carved stonework buildings, and of course later again modern architecture. But the streets here in the New Town were named after the royal family to show loyalty to the crown. So we're in Frederick Street, George III's father. We will be turning onto George Street after the man himself, Queen Charlotte. Nice shops here and nice restaurants and bars if you want to spend some time here later. Of course, in the past you could easily turn your horse and carriage in George Street. It's nice and wide, isn't it? Oh, Hamilton and Inches. Very nice jeweller. A friend of mine used to work there, and you know what? They had a competition to see the rudest phrase that they could get away with their customers. The favourite one I heard was so a lady was taken by a young gentleman and said, "Ah, madam, let me take you up the bottom." I think that, yeah, that's definitely on the short list. Now we're going on diversion. Straight ahead would have been Charlotte Square, but there we've got some amusement. Nice ring. Down here on the right hand side, Walter Scott's house. Just there. Notice the curved bay windows. Not quite bay windows, but the Georgian architects getting a little bit more adventurous. On here on the left, there's actually above this tailor here, see the country outfitter. If you look up to the left, that's the workshop up there where they make all the adjustments. Some offices, yeah, and the big hotel. Architecture, I hope we will get to see it, although the light is fading a wee bit. Robert Adam got the chance to design the square in its entirety, and he did a great job. He took the individual townhouses and he brought them together into a lovely, letting daylight into your hallway, and of course there's a cupola up in the roof letting daylight down the central stairwell. But they're quite deep buildings, and if you get a chance to look up the top, notice how many chimneys there are. Yeah, so how many fire lit with whale oil? Today it's LED bulbs from China. At ground level. Yeah, today it's only high margin businesses can afford their answer. Other lotteries are available. This is Charlotte Square. Is anybody wanting off here? No, this is for the Johnny Walker experience, the West End of Princess Street. No, I think we're all staying on camera. And in the north part of the square, it's quite hard to see now, but there is a sphinx on top of the very number 10 Downing Street. It's Bute House, the official residence of Nicola Sturgeon, our First Minister. Walter Scott, fund managers on the left there. so you're getting a chance to look into some of the buildings. Yeah, street property, but even more flats. Townhouses have tunnels going under the road into the private gardens on the left. Now in the past, these tunnels allowed the maids to retain a key for these gardens as a few £100 every year. But for that they do cut the grass. Now in the next block along here on the right hand side, we've got the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Up there on the first floor, many of the lamps here, the 4 lamps at ground level. If you look up you can see some figures. On the right we've got Hippocrates, statue of Hippocrates of the Hippocratic Oath, yes. Now, if you're with us tomorrow or in town, tomorrow, some great portraits, modern ones. Annie Lennox, Billy Connolly, Sean Connery, yeah, lots of others. Well, thank you once again, Karen, for getting us safely around the town. Well, my name is Sandy. I hope you've enjoyed the live guide experience. If you've got any feedback for me, I'm always looking to improve the tour. If you did